Now, as I just mentioned, this is the third session. We started off by discussing ways in which you can improve on your time, relating that to financial management. There was a time tracker, a sample that was provided that you can use and just to track your time. That time tracker had where you can track your time for 7 days so that you can see what you're spending your time doing, which is pretty much the key to this particular session, which is save time and earn more. Most paralegals have to bill for their time. You work on a project, you work on a task, you may be paid a salary or a specific amount per hour, but that's not the amount that's billed back to a client. So whatever you work on is billed back to a client. So the more time that you save, if you reduce time wasters, then you actually are improving on your billable time. So that's what we're going to focus on in this session. Yesterday's session, we focused on time as well. So this will be the last one. Next week, we'll start on a new series. That series will be Get Serious, getting serious in your career, overcoming career stagnation. So in this one, we will first start off, hopefully you use the time tracker. You've started that. Even if you don't do that for 7 days, try that out, maybe for 1 day. 1 day, keep track of everything that you do. Even if you think it's insignificant, write it down, keep track of it. This will allow you to see exactly what you're spending your time doing. Once you do that, you may be surprised on how many things you do that are unnecessary. And that goes into eliminating time wasters. Everything that you do, it cannot be billed back to clients. Even if it's not recreational, it's not everything that you do that can be billed back to clients. Even if it's filing, you may be filing away documents that are specific to a case. Although you're working on the case, you're not on Facebook, you're not on social media, you're working on that case, that does not mean that that time can be billed back to clients. So when you become aware of those things that are not billable, it allows you to improve upon your meeting your billable hour quotas. That pretty much ties into, a lot of firms will tie that into your bonuses. Also, it will also affect whether or not you will get a raise or whether you will get a promotion. If a manager looks at your time and they see that you're struggling to keep up on your current job, what manager in their right mind will promote you to give you more responsibility when you can't even handle what's on your plate? Yesterday's title was biting off more than you can chew. That session provided some tips on how you can become a better multitasker, handling your time efficiently. So dealing with what's currently on your plate allows a manager to promote you if that's what you're looking for. If they see that you're struggling, you can't keep up, you can't handle what they are assigning to you, most likely you're not going to get a promotion. You may get a raise because some companies just provide raises, every so often. That raise may not be as much as you could earn based on the fact that you're not showing that you're able to properly manage what you currently have to work on. So if you eliminate those time wasters, you eliminate how much time you're spending on these things, because some things you have to work on. Even if you can't bill for them, you have to do it. If you don't have a file clerk in your office, someone that looks for files for you or files them back, you have to do that yourself, then that's just something that's part of your job. You have to do that. But if you handle things in an efficient way, then you spend less time. Give an example. Let's say, for instance, you do have to look for files. I worked in a firm before where we had a huge filing room pretty much, and cases that were worked on, there was a physical file for each case, and information was needed within that file. to work on the case. We needed, I worked in bankruptcy, mortgage bankruptcy, needed the real estate, the mortgage, needed other legal documents that were filed on the case prior to it being handed off to me. Well, I needed a physical file. So in that sense, most of the times the files were handed off, but it depended on what stage I was in. I may have needed to locate the file. Well, that required going to the file room, locating the file. I didn't have just one case. There were several cases that I had to work on. So in that instance, it would not be a good use of my time that every single time I needed a file, I run down, get the file, come back up. How much time would be wasted to do that? A more efficient approach, and if you have cases that you work similar to this, is know what you're working on. Have if you have a spreadsheet, if you have a list, if you have a system that you see what's coming up, what's going to be handed to you, take that list, look at all the files that you need, go down and have a specific date or a time that you pull all of your files, not one by one. Okay, well, today I'm working on, even though you may not be working on it that day, if you're going to be working on it the next day, the week, pull it, maybe for the week, all the files that you're going to work on that particular week, if you're able to, because some processes are very quick, and there's different people that handle specific aspects of a case during the process. So if you're not able to do that because someone else has it, of course you don't want to disrupt the workflow just so that you can improve your billable time. You want to be mindful of things like that. But if that's not the case, take one day or a specific block of time, look at your workload. We talked about this yesterday. You want to plan ahead. Don't just be reactive. Okay, like you have to assign this file. Let me do this, and you're being reactive. You're not planning ahead, breaking down projects into steps. What you want to do is look at what you have assigned, look at the cases, know that, okay, I'm going to have to do A, B, C, and D. In order to do A, I need this. In order to start, I need files. That's step one. Pull all of them. That will save you a great deal of time, because filing is not something that can be billed back. Can't bill client for filing. That's considered clerical work. That's things that are considered for a file clerk or a secretary to handle, administrative assistant. And even though you may not have that in your office, that work is still considered to be clerical, even though you as a paralegal may be handling it. So you want to minimize the amount of time that you're spending on those particular things by being more efficient. So that's just one example. But you want to familiarize yourself with what is billable and what is not billable. And a rule of thumb is things that are considered to be clerical. Paralegals work on substantive legal functions. Substantive legal functions include things like legal research, drafting documents, interviewing clients. Those are substantive legal functions. So substantive legal functions are things that will be billed back to clients. Clerical things, something that, because a paralegal typically works on things, same things that attorney does, but they're being delegated to a paralegal to free up an attorney's time to be able to decrease the cost of services offered to clients. So ask yourself, is this something that attorney would do? Even though he may, file his own doc, but in essence, you're really providing this type of services outside of, again, not familiar with this or don't know this, paralegals can't set fees. Paralegals cannot represent clients in court, give legal advice. So outside of those things, legal research, drafting documents, interviewing clients, those are things that an attorney would normally do if that attorney had the time, or if your firm didn't set it up, because some companies, some law firms that maybe, let's say, work for an insurance company. The insurance company is their company's client. They actually will require the work to be assigned to specific individuals. So they will scrutinize billing. If they see a high-priced attorney working on a particular task, because in their mind, it's like, well, why don't you assign this to a paralegal? The cost would be cheaper. So they will scrutinize billing to make sure that costs are not more than what they should. So that being said, to determine what's billable or not billable, if you're not familiar with that, clerical, is this something that an attorney will typically do? You know, filing and doing these type of clerical functions. Substantive legal functions are what are billable. Filing, scheduling, you know, in-office meetings, that's not billable. I don't, even if you're talking about a case, you know, those certain things, in-office meetings, those things are not billable, you know. So the more time that is spent on billable functions, more time that's saved from not wasting time, spending on time wasted, the more you can improve your efficiency, mapping out what you'll be working on for the week. Or a week is a good increment of time. A month may be a little bit too long depending on how many cases you work on and how fast the turnover is. But a week is a pretty good chunk of time to map out exactly what you'll be working on that week and determine what it is that you need. And then from there, breaking it down. Another way to become more efficient is learn how to use systems better. Later on in our series, we will get more specific, and you'll be provided with tips on how to use particular systems, tips and tricks for legal research and things of that nature later on. But those are things that help you become more efficient. And let's say, for an example, Microsoft Word, and this is just, you know, a real simple tip. But let's say, for instance, Control P, you know, that print. You know, there are shortcuts in other systems as well that you can do things. You can create templates. You can create templates within systems. I know in some of the cloud-based practice management systems, the online practice management systems, my case is one, where you can actually create a template. You can create a template. Let's say, for instance, there's a specific document, a notice that's sent out on every case that you handle. The wording is identical. The only thing that's changing is the case number and party name. But everything else is staying the same. Well, there's a template that can be created, and actually it's even more efficient than Microsoft Word templates. If you're familiar with Microsoft Word templates or mail merge, it will merge information from a database, but you have to actually input this data. You would have to input the first party's name, the case number. Now these templates within, and I gave an example, my case, you create the template. Actually what you do is really just a click of a button, because when you start a case, you're already inputting. Let's say another person in your office is responsible for putting case information in your practice management system. They put the party's name, they put their address, phone number, case number. This is something that's done as soon as a case is brought to your office. So this is already done. So now when it's time for you to create this notice, you're not typing in any of this information. You're really just selecting the template, which would be the notice, select the party, click a button, and now you have a notice done. You're finished. So a document that may have taken you, maybe 10, 15 minutes now takes you maybe 30 seconds to a minute to complete. So those are things that allow you to improve your efficiency. Those are things that allow you to do more with your time. It allows, and efficiency cuts down on the amount of time that you're spending. So I'm going to wrap this particular session up, and then look forward to those. Look for future Paralegal Power Breaks, because these are more, about managing your time. This is a new year. Usually at the beginning of the year, this is when a lot of people are creating their goals, so to speak, for the year. It's a good time to focus on the basics, just the foundation of reaching career goals. One of those things at the foundation is time management. But in the future, we'll go on to get more specific into practice management system tips, legal research tips. So look out for those and go to our blog. There's a Paralegal Power Break category. Click on that. That would allow you to access past as well as future Paralegal Power Breaks. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. The website where you can go and access future as well as past Power Breaks, rainmakersonline.com. Hopefully this session was useful, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.